Welcome to the Author Advantage series, a free 10-session course filled with practical tips to help you succeed, whether you're a first-time author or a New York Times bestseller. I'm Franklin, and I've been in the book business for 25 years, having led sales and marketing teams at some of the world's largest publishing houses. I started Amplify Marketing Services in 2019 so that I could bring our experiences to a broader range of publishers and authors such as yourself. Over the last few years, we've helped dozens of authors and 28 different publishers. Those publishers helped shape the contents of this course so that it would contain everything they wish their authors knew. This is session 2 in this interactive video course series. We invite you to leave comments, questions, and ideas in YouTube comments, and also feel free to join our Facebook community in a group called Author Advantage Network. There's a link to it in the description. Today we're going to discuss the complex and difficult decision of whether you should self-publish or work with a traditional publisher. Now I know what you're thinking. You just told us that you work with 28 different publishing companies, so obviously you're biased and you're going to steer us in the direction of the traditional publishing route. Actually, although I have helped many authors get book deals with the big 5 publishing houses, I've also encouraged quite a few authors to self-publish. I'm an author myself, actually, and you might be surprised to know that all of my books were self-published. So I do understand both sides of this decision very well. Some authors should work with a publisher, and others should not. Sometimes even best-selling authors who could easily get book deals, sometimes even they decide to self-publish, and it's a good decision for them. There are pros and cons to self-publishing and to working with a traditional publisher. And that's what we're going to discuss today. We're going to start with the positive today by looking at the pros for both options, and then we'll circle back and look at the cons for both options. Before we dive into this, I just want to say that we're going to spend more time in the pros section than we will in the cons section, because a lot of the cons that we're going to review are just the flip side of the pros, so they won't require as much unpacking. Let's start with 5 pros for working with a traditional publisher. Pro number 1 is definitely the prestige of it. Being a published author does mean something. It carries weight and honor because not everyone can get a book deal from a legit established publishing house. These publishers get hundreds of book proposals each month. Many don't make the cut. In fact, a lot of those book proposals aren't even read through. We're going to cover that in the next session. Session 3 is about how to make your book proposal pop. Working with a traditional publisher does come with a certain amount of prestige. It can even advance your career by taking it to the next level. I know of a few national marketing events where you can't even speak unless you're a published author. So having a book that you've published through a traditional method might get you more opportunities for speaking engagements so that you can build your platform and grow your career. Also, the publicists that work at a traditional publishing house might be able to get you TV appearances or at least podcast interviews with popular podcasts that you might never have been able to get onto on your own. And those things can open up so many doors of opportunities for you. So working with a traditional publisher does have prestige tied to it, and it can definitely benefit your career. Pro number 2 for working with a traditional publisher is that they'll do a lot of the work for you. Before a book ever hits the shelf, there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and a publishing house can do a lot of that heavy lifting. Proofreaders and editors carefully shape the content of your book. Cover designers, illustrators, and typesetters help shape the formatting of your book. Metadata experts help make sure all those details are accurate and complete and formatted for all of those who receive the Onyx feed from your publisher, including BISAC codes, age ranges, trim size, page count. Then there's the work that the sales and marketing teams do. The sales team convinces book buyers at retailers and also at distributors to take in enough copies of your book to meet the demand. The marketing team fine-tunes the messaging and the positioning of your book for the market, and they set up your marketing plans, your ad copy, your ad creative, and schedule your publicity opportunities. Writing a book is the hard part. A publishing company can do a lot of things, but they can't do much with a poorly written book. So we all acknowledge in the publishing industry, we wouldn't be much of a business at all without excellent writers such as yourself. So your part is vital, but so is theirs. They do a lot of work to make your book successful. And I didn't even list half of the things that publishers do for authors, things that you would have to figure out how to do on your own if you didn't have their help. Pro number 3 is that publishing houses take all the risk. Before making a cent on your content, they invest their staff's time in shaping your book for the market. That's costly in itself. Then they take on more risk with the initial print run. It costs a lot to print books. Paper costs have risen a lot in recent years. There was a big jump in the cost of paper when paper suppliers realized that they could make more money turning trees into boxes than books. When e-commerce started to become more popular and more packages had to be shipped, a lot of paper manufacturers shifted away from books and started to manufacture boxes. So the growth of online retail has hurt the book industry in the sense of the cost of production of books. That was exacerbated even more during COVID because more people did all of their shopping online. There is a link in this video's description to a really helpful article that maps out the cost increases of paper since 1980 that might be worth checking out if you're interested in it. So the initial print run is a big risk that publishers take, and it's always a gamble whether they're going to get a good return on that investment. Then there's the cost of shipping. Publishers ship the books from the printer to their warehouse, and sometimes if an order is large enough, they'll ship directly from the printer to their distributors and to some retail chains. But what many authors and readers might not know is that publishers also have to pay to ship books back when they don't sell. Many retailers and distributors require publishers to sell books on a returnable basis, and they also require the publisher to pay for that shipping to send those books back. That's expensive, but an added cost to that is many of those books that come back aren't sellable as new anymore. They receive too much wear from being handled on store shelves, or they receive damage from the back and forth shipping between the warehouse and the distributor and the retailer, and then all the way back again. There's also a cost to developing the digital formats of your books. Some authors and readers just assume that ebooks should be very cheap because no paper is involved, but there is a cost associated with producing the format that's required for each of the digital readers that are out there. We're talking about formats like EPUB, PDFs, and AZW3 formats for Kindle editions. And there are other formats as well. Audiobook production also isn't cheap. So if you ever wonder why the royalty rate in a book deal that you're offered by a publisher is lower than you expected, there is a reason. There are many hidden costs associated with publishing a book, and if you were to self-publish, you'd have to tackle all those yourself and take on all that risk. So publishers are taking all the risk, and that is a big pro for working with a traditional publisher. Pro number 4 is that publishers have a network. They have printers, they have relationships with bookstores, chains of stores, international retail, libraries, gift shops, airport stores, you name it, a traditional publisher has the connections that you don't have. And that network will make a big difference in making your book successful. Let's go back to distributors for a moment, though. Some distributors handle not only getting books back and forth from the printer in the warehouse to the retail stores, but some distributors own the relationship with big box retail. For example, you can't just go directly to Target or Costco or Sam's Club's book buyers and try to get your book placed in their stores. You have to go through a distributor like ReaderLink. And it's not easy to get a relationship with the ReaderLink to give you the opportunity to get in front of the people who make the decisions about what books go into those big box stores. Then there are ebook distributors as well, and audiobook distributors who handle all of the digital distribution and formatting of your content so that it will seamlessly connect to things like Apple Books, Kobo, Nook, and Libby, which is the library's option for consuming digital content. And for audiobooks, there's the relationship with Spotify and Google Play and other audiobook retailers. So there's a big advantage to working with a publisher just because of their network and their connections to the entire ecosystem of the book business, something that you likely don't have on your own. The fifth and last pro of working with a traditional publisher is that they can get better results. Typically, a traditional publisher can sell more copies of your book than you can without them. Even if you hire experienced help as a self-published author, it will be harder for you to sell as many books as they can for you. For example, to get on the New York Times bestseller list, you have to sell thousands of books in 1 week's time. And you need to have broad distribution to make that happen. It's very unlikely that you can sell enough copies through KDP on Amazon to qualify for the New York Times bestseller list. You need to have your books placed in a number of retail outlets that report into what's called BookScan and BookStat. That's what New York Times pulls from to determine the bestseller list. So if that matters to you, being able to say you're a New York Times bestseller, it will be nearly impossible to do that as a self-published author. It's something that requires broad distribution that really only a publisher can help you accomplish. If that matters to you, you might want to seek a book deal. Publishers also can get better results from their advertising than you can on your own. In sessions 8 and 9 of this series, we're going to discuss book advertising, but it's important for you to know that a publisher will get better results from ads than you can on your own. The way that ad platforms work, especially Amazon ads, they're more effective and efficient if you have a larger budget and a larger number of books included in the campaigns. So a publisher with thousands or even hundreds of books has an advantage in advertising over a self-published author. And for all the other reasons stated earlier in the first 4 pros of working with a traditional publisher, you'll get better results when you have experienced professionals that are editing your content, designing your cover, and selling and distributing and marketing your books for you. So those are the 5 pros of working with a publisher. If you're a published author and you have other pros that you've experienced that you're willing to share, please leave that in the comments on YouTube and also in our Facebook group. Now let's move on to 4 pros of being a self-published author. Pro number 1 is control. This is perhaps the biggest pro to self-publishing. You retain complete control over your intellectual property. There are many areas in which you might value this type of control. For example, if you don't welcome the editorial process, self-publishing might be a better option for you. And I'm not just referring to difficult authors who are too proud to let anyone change their masterpiece. Sure, that does happen, that can happen, but there are times when an author has a clear, tight vision for their work that publishers struggle to get behind. Publishers, for example, might want to radically reduce your word count to make it fit within a $16 or $17 paperback instead of a much larger hardcover. Can you imagine if Brandon Sanderson's publisher insisted that The Way of Kings had to be under 300 pages in length? It's over 1,000 pages, and if you're listening to it in an audiobook, it's over 50 hours of listening time. But it is a bestseller. And according to Amazon at the time of this recording, over 10,000 copies were bought or read in the last month. That is impressive, and I just can't help but wonder what that conversation was like when he first presented that book proposal to his publisher. In many cases, it's wise and recommended to lean on the expertise of a publisher, but there are times when an author should stick to their plan. And if that's the case with you, you might want to go with the self-publishing route. Pro number 2 is related to the first, but seemed distinct enough to warrant its own category, and that is flexibility. Along with control, you might want more flexibility to do what you want with your book. You can make edits to the content, the format, or the cover design whenever you think it's warranted. You might want to pursue movie rights or streaming TV rights for the content of your book. You might want to be flexible with how you pursue international and translation rights for your content. You can be flexible with how much of your book you allow others to excerpt or quote. So control and flexibility are the first 2 pros of self-publishing. The third is profitability, but really mostly on a per book basis. Depending on how much you invest in hiring professional help with various parts of the book production process, your profit can be higher per book when you self-publish. In most cases, you'll make more money overall when you work with a traditional publisher because of all those reasons we stated earlier. They're able to distribute and get your book in front of more people. But when you look at it as a profit per unit sold, you can make more money self-publishing. And for some authors, that's enough of a factor when combined with control and flexibility for them to swing more towards self-publishing than the traditional publishing route. Pro number 4 for self-publishing is that it can be used strategically to set you up for a book deal in the future. I have seen this work successfully a few times for authors who struggled to get a book deal. One of the best ways to persuade a publisher to pay attention to your proposal is to be able to demonstrate that you have a self-published book that has sold thousands of copies already. The more units sold, the better, This metric will mitigate the risk that they feel when reviewing your proposal. And this metric means so much more to a publisher than others, such as how many subscribers you have to your blog or your YouTube channel, or how many social followers you have on a platform. It used to be that publishers would go largely on those numbers, and if someone could say that they had hundreds of thousands of followers, it was enough to get at least some kind of a book deal offer. But publishers have been burnt too many times from that. Having a large following on social media doesn't necessarily translate over into a guaranteed number of units that will sell. There's no metric that is stronger and more convincing for a publisher to see than actual units of your book sold that proves you have a platform and that you have an audience that cares about your content and will purchase it. So you can strategically self-publish, sell thousands of books, and then come to publishers either with that book, asking them to publish it themselves, or with your next book. Those are the 4 pros of self-publishing. If you're a self-published author and you have other pros that you'd like to add to the list, please contribute that in the YouTube comments and in the Facebook group. I look forward to reading them, and I know everyone else will enjoy reading them too. Now let's move on to the cons, and we will move more quickly through this, as I stated earlier, because some of these points are just the flip side of the pros that we looked at previously. Let's start with 3 cons of traditional publishing. Con number 1 is it isn't easy. It isn't easy to get a book deal. It can be a full-time job in itself to pursue book deals from traditional publishing houses. Even best-selling author J.K. Rowling had a dozen rejections before she was able to get Harry Potter acquired. You need to spend a lot of time making a compelling book proposal. We're going to dedicate the entire next session to that. But then you need to customize it for each of the publishing houses that you're submitting it to. First, you have to customize it so that it aligns with all the submission guidelines that are unique to each publishing house. And then you need to customize it to explain why you believe they're the right publisher for you to partner with. It could take over a year or 2 to get a book deal with a traditional publishing house. And for some authors, they could use that time to self-publish and at least get their writing career off the ground. Con number 2 of working with a traditional publisher is that you have to give up at least some control, and you have to be flexible and make some compromises. You need to let the publisher do what they do best, and that means you have to work with them on shaping the content, choosing a title and a subtitle, the tone and feel of the cover design, the marketing approach and the ad designs, the price even of your book, the format of your book, whether it should be a paperback or a hardcover, and a number of other things. Not only will you need to yield in areas that you might want to control yourself, it will also be important for you to learn how to compromise with a smile and an authentic, genuine, grateful spirit. Everyone at a publishing company is very busy and they work very hard for their authors. You'll get more out of your partnership with those people in the publishing company if you can be delightful to work with. Be patient when you ask for something. Thank them often. Don't make anyone sigh when they see your email address pop up in their inbox. Be so sweet and kind and thoughtful that they'll gladly pick up the phone when they see your caller ID number, and they'll respond quickly when you need something. It will actually be in your best interest to do that because you'll get better service, but it's also the right thing as we try to help other people enjoy their jobs more. They will love working with you, and they will work even harder to promote your book if you're gracious and kind with them. The last con number 3 of working with a traditional publisher, is less profit per book sold. This is the flip side of what we talked before. Now, this might not be true after you factor in all costs, including the people you hire, and even if you calculate your own time that you spend, but the perception will be that you would make more money with selling your books yourself than when you do through a publisher, especially when you look at the royalty percentages that you're offered in a book deal and you compare that to what Amazon through KDP offers, which is up to 70% of the revenue that you get to keep for those Kindle sales. There is a perceived lower profitability per unit sold when an author works with a publishing house. But I still hold my claim that you will make more money overall because there will be a higher scale of books sold. 15% of 100,000 units that a traditional publisher might be able to sell will bring a lot more revenue to you than 70% of 2,000 units. That's just a hypothetical, but because of the scale at which they can sell and distribute your books, you're likely going to make more, but you will potentially see that you're making less profit per book sold. Now let's move on to 6 cons of self-publishing. The number one con of being a self-published author is that it takes more work. There's no doubt about it. You're going to put in more hours if you do this yourself. Even if you contract out with a lot of experts to have them do different parts of the process, you're going to be a full-time project manager. As we said before, publishers do a lot of the heavy lifting. They spread out that work among their team, which are experts and very efficient at what they do. Con number 2 is that you're taking on more personal and financial risk. You are probably going to need to hire some help. I highly recommend that you hire experienced help if you're going to do this on your own. And all that cost is going to hit your bank account before you see a cent from the sale of your books. And if you decide to go with a print run instead of print on demand, you're going to have to incur the cost of that entire printing before any of those units are distributed or sold. Con number 3 is that self-published authors have fewer options available to them than publishing houses have. Depending on how and where you decide to print your book, you might have fewer trim size options. KDP only has certain formats that they allow you to print in, especially for illustrated children's books. You also might want your book to have certain features like French flaps or spot gloss or a ribbon marker or imitation leather cover or cloth over board or linen over board or a page edge design or gilding, and those things will likely not be on the table for you as a self-published author. Con number 4 is closely related to that, which is that there will be a lower production quality for your book. Offset printed books have better tolerances. Print-on-demand books, such as through KDP or Ingram Spark, they have deviations between each book that can affect the color and the tone of the cover, and even the way the book is trimmed. They can be trimmed a little bit differently when those are cut, so it might not be centered perfectly, or there might be a little issue with the bleed at the edges. Con number 5 for being a self-published author is a higher cost. Everything will come at a higher cost to you. Publishers benefit from scale. They can source paper more cheaply than you can. They can negotiate better terms with printers because of all the other books that they're printing at the same time. They can negotiate better rates with retailers because of the scale of their business. So your cost as a self-published author will be higher than that of a traditional publishing house just because of scale. The last con of being a self-published author is less placement opportunities. Books sell not just because they're well written. Those books have to be seen. They have to be in the line of sight of a customer or a reader. When a book is placed prominently within retail stores, it will sell more units. You don't just want your book to be in stores that readers frequent. You also want it to be in special places such as end caps, feature walls, feature tables, near the point of sale, or at least on the top shelf of an aisle. The more visible a book is, the more in the line of sight that it is within a store, the better it will sell. But self-published authors will have a hard enough time even getting their books into Costco or Target or Barnes & Noble, let alone getting it to have prominent placement within those stores. By the way, those placements are not free. All of those places that are in the line of sight in retail stores cost the publisher what's called co-op dollars. So they have to pay to be on an end cap. They have to pay to be on a feature wall, a feature table, or at the point of sale. And that even happens in e-commerce. Sometimes people complain that an ad for a book shows up in the search results page on Amazon. And yes, that's true. You have to pay to get top placement in those highly visible parts of a website. But that's nothing new. Publishers have always had to pay to get their books seen, and e-commerce is just another way that we have to pay to play. I'm not trying to discourage you from self-publishing by sharing these 6 cons. You can still do it and you can be successful, but it is important to count the cost and weigh your options. And if you decide to go the self-publishing route, I strongly encourage you to set yourself up for success by taking an honest assessment of your own strengths and weaknesses and hiring out professionals who are experts and are experienced in the areas in which you're not, like cover design or typesetting, editing, or proofreading. Hire people who know what they're doing and have a strong track record of success in those areas, and you'll set yourself up to have a more successful self-publishing experience. That concludes session 2 of the Author Advantage series. Please add your thoughts, your questions, your experiences to the comments in YouTube and also in the Facebook group, and take time to read others' comments as well. In the next session, we're going to discuss how to make your book proposal pop. Now, if you decide to go the self-publishing route, you obviously won't need to make a book proposal, but I still encourage you to watch session 3. Even if you watch it on 2 times speed or you skim and skip through it, there are parts of that video that are going to be beneficial to you. For example, we're going to talk about your digital platform and how to leverage it for the sales of your book. So I do encourage you not to skip past that. I think you'll still get a lot from it. Thank you for watching and contributing. We'll see you in session 3.